Good afternoon, it's Pastor Marty. Welcome to the Friday edition of the Afternoon Drive. On my radio show, we don't deal with pop culture or politics on Fridays. Friday is our fun day. I figured that by 5 o'clock drive home time on Friday, most people have had their fill. They're on information overload. So we just strictly do the Friday radio broadcast right for fun. And what we do is what we call the Friday flashback. If you remember, if you love top 40 radio 1960s hits, you will love the Friday flashback. And that's what we do. We play 1960s hits. We put on old commercials, some retro blast stuff. It is just a lot of fun. No politics, no pop culture. For my radio listeners, they come here on Fridays if they want pop culture and politics. All right, all that aside, now that you know more about my radio show than maybe you wanted to, it is the post-Biden announcement. Why, he's already beating Donald Trump by 8 points in the polls. And I mean, the Dems last night couldn't help but salivate all over MSNBC, CNN, Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News. I mean, this is it. They've got their guy. Hillary was supposed to win, remember? I mean, right up to Election Day. The New York Times said she had a 145% chance of winning. And then midway through the night of the election results, she was down to a 10% chance of winning. So, you know, a poll that's 2 years out from the election has Biden up 8 points. Now, some people were saying last night that, well, it's obvious the Republicans are scared of Biden. We're not scared of Biden. Give me a break. Now, I did think that it was interesting that some Republicans are warning against don't go after Biden on the racism stuff. And I think that there's some wisdom in that. Now, of course, we know that Biden in the 1970s was still very pro-segregation. He was anti-busing, but a lot of Republicans were too. And African-American groups seem to be rather forgiving of the Democrats and, shall we say, their racist history than they are anyone that is remotely considered conservative. I.e., look at Kate Smith. God bless America. And now her statue is being taken down in front of one sporting arena, and her version of God Bless America has been banned by the Yankees, by hockey teams, and now around the nation, because out of a career that dated all the way back to the 1930s and over 1,500 recordings, there were 2 recordings back in the early 1930s that by today's standards would be considered racist. I can tell you as an oldies DJ, as a record collector, and I don't mean just, vinyl. I have shellac, which means 78s. And some of my shellac collection goes all the way back to the turn of the 20th century. I have recordings from the very early 1900s. And I'm not saying this is right. I'm not defending it in any way, but I can tell you there's a lot of music from that era that would, by today's standards, be considered very, very racist. Joe Biden is claiming, hey, I've evolved. I've evolved. I'm not the guy that I was in the 1970s on issues like race. I've evolved. I've even apologized to Anita Hill, and he said that on The View today. By the way, Anita Hill rejects his apology. By the way, he should have never apologized to Anita Hill. She's a liar. But, I don't want to go clouding this issue with facts. But right now, Biden's out there in typical Democratic, we're going to rewrite history. Lyndon Baines Johnson is considered the guy that gave Black America civil rights, despite the fact there are hundreds of hours of recordings of him throwing the N-word around like it's candy. And he certainly didn't respect, quote, the ends of the day. He just wanted their vote. But at the end of the day, they're still just nay. But if we point that out, oh, well, people can evolve, people can grow. Why is it Democrats get to evolve, Democrats get to grow, but if there was a recording that actually surfaced of Donald Trump using that word, what would happen in this country right now? What would the Democrats do with that? Would they use that toward articles of impeachment before the ink could dry? That's a yes. Absolutely. So Joe is in makeover mode now. And I believe it was Larry Elder who said last night, don't go after him on race. After all, he did serve for 8 years as the vice president to America's first black president. So we're going to have a hard time making, quote, the race issue stick. And he's right, because again, Democrats get a pass on their history, whether it's sexual, whether it's racial. And even though we have done a lot, I believe, to educate the American voter, in particular black voters, that the real racism in this country is systemic with the Democratic Party. Remember, they gave you the Ku Klux Klan. Remember, it was the Dixiecrats that gave you segregation and Jim Crow laws. So the history of racism in this country really, really weighs heavy on the Democratic side, despite the fact that Joe B came out and, he started right into that whole Charlottesville hogwash and misquoting the president. When the president said there were good sides on both people, the president, what never gets played by the news media, is the rest of his answer. He said, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists that were there. They need to be condemned immediately. He was saying, though, that not everybody that was marching against taking down the Confederate flag, toppling Confederate soldiers' statues, what he was trying to say was not everybody that was in protest of that was a neo-Nazi or a white nationalist. Some of them were just proud Southerners who themselves are not racist. They don't hate anybody, but they don't want to see what they believe to be their heritage taken away like that. That was the point he was trying to make. I could sit here and say he wasn't articulate enough with it, but that doesn't matter. He was going to get jumped no matter what, because even Mitt Romney jumped him for that. Mitt. Anyhow, so as the Republicans move forward, there is apparently, and I couldn't understand why they were not jumping on the bandwagon of, hey, he's been vindicated by Mueller. Let's get on the Trump bandwagon. Heidi-ho, let's go. Today it comes out. We've had a GDP of 3.2%. The economy is exploding right now. And even Democrats are going, they don't know what to run on. So why aren't the Republicans getting on board with this? And I saw a little article, an obscure little article, that says the problem with Republicans right now is they fear, after Trump, what is their identity? Because they don't want to be identified as Trump. Every registered Republican needs to understand what they're saying. They understand they may have to put up with him even for 4 more years. They're not going to work real hard to help him get reelected. But should he get reelected, and I believe he will, Republicans are already looking to 2024. What do we run on? We're not like Trump. So they're going to go back to the old, tired playbook. But I believe that the conservatives within the Republican Party are woke. And what I mean by that is there will be other candidates like Trump who will rise up, who will not be the darlings of the Republican Party, who will not be part of the inner circle. They weren't skull and crossbones. They weren't bred from the time of their incubation in their mother's womb to be the next middle of the road, do nothing, globalist-minded Republican, establishment Republican, with the proper bedside manner and the presidential look, whatever that is. Another bought and paid for mouthpiece of the deep state. And they don't care whether they have an R by their name or a Democrat. It makes no difference to them because they're not ideological on the things that we care about. Constitution, the law, protecting our borders, our language, our culture. No. They're globalists. And they only care about globalism and having a never-ending war somewhere because that makes money. Doesn't matter whether or not the economy does well, or you're doing well, or you have a job. The industrial military establishment will do well. And anybody that's part of that, might we insert here the former VP of George W. Bush, might we insert here, he did really well with the Iraq wars, personally, financially, for his family, for his corporate partners. The Dick Cheneys do well. Psst, and I'll bet the Mitt Romneys did too. You didn't. You were watching your jobs go overseas, and then that really accelerated when Barack Obama took the reins. All that's coming back now. This economy is getting stronger. You are in a place to actually begin to start building now some actual generational wealth. And that is a big no-no to the oligarch, to the deep state, to those that see themselves as the establishment, power, and authority. So that's why they refuse to get on the Trump train. And that's why we have to be careful, because they probably will back a Biden or a Bernie Sanders. Just soften up that socialist message, Bernie. Just soften it up. Well, that's it. That is my afternoon rant for today. Thanks so much for watching us. Make sure that you are spreading the word about this channel, please. We have been watching some incredible growth over the last month of this channel. I've been doing this now for quite a while, and it kind of got to a plateau and just sort of stagnated, and then all of a sudden, it has just really begun to take off, and I want to thank you for that. Please continue to share these videos. Let your friends know that we're here. Alternative media is where it's at. You're not going to get the truth from the lying legacy, corporate, corrupt, mainstream media. I don't care whether it's PMS, NBC, CNN, LBGT TV, Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News. They're all varying degrees of controlled opposition. That is all they are. They are about propaganda. They are not about news. You're going to get real news is online. You got to go to alternative news sites. I even go to some of the alternative leftist sites because some of them are more honest than a CNN or a PMSNBC. Jimmy Dore, a flaming progressive liberal. Secular Talk, Kyle Kaczynski, another flaming leftist. Both of them, from day one, were absolutely opposed to and decrying the fake Russian collusion, hoax, and investigation into Donald Trump. They knew what was going on. They understood what was happening. So, alternative media is where it's at. So make sure that you please spread what we're doing here to other people. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell. Get my next rant.